Hello and welcome to Breaking News here on CNN. We're bringing you live pictures out of Festus, Missouri, about 50 miles south of St. Louis, where a train filled with chlorine started leaking on the tracks outside a chemical plant where workers were offloading about 180,000 pounds of chlorine. Several hundred people have been evacuated in a mobile home park area. About 50 people are complaining about breathing problems. Fortunately, according to authorities out there who tell us that the wind is light so that the chemical is not spreading very quickly. Breathing in chlorine fumes can cause serious illness, a burning of the lungs, even some brain damage, and in some cases death. This happened at about 9:30 local time there when workers were trying to offload that chemical into a company called the DPC Enterprises, and when the hose ruptured. So they have hazmat teams on the scene right now. They're trying to find the location of the leak so that they can fix it. Her motive was because clearly she wanted to take care of the little girl if she brought her into a medical clinic. So we'll find out more when you hear that news conference. Thank you very much. Rusty Dornan live in Echo Park in Los Angeles. All right, we want to bring you some fresh pictures now. In fact, it might even be a live picture. There you go. It is a live picture out of Festus, Missouri, where hazmat workers are getting ready. You can see them in the red suits there to go in, and what they're trying to do is identify the source of the leak in this train. It's a chlorine gas that's leaking out of this train. It was loaded with about 180,000 pounds of chlorine when it pulled up to this chemical plant. And right now on the telephone is Dr. John Palmer with the American Chemical Society. Did I get that right, Dr. Palmer?
Yes, you did.
All right. If you can see this picture, can you
Unfortunately, I'm not in a position
All right,
to see
let me describe it to you. I see at least two hazmat workers in orange suits on top of the car that contains the chemical. You've still got chlorine gas leaking out from the bottom portion of it. How would you describe they're going to try to attack this problem?
Well, in general, they have to worry about the public safety. So the first thing they've done, obviously, was evacuate the area, which is a wise move. And then they worry about their own safety. The suits are a help, but they also have to have a practical way to shut off the leak. Otherwise, the best thing is to stand back and just protect the public from getting too close to it. So I assume that what they're trying to do right now is decide if there's a hose or something, is there a shutoff valve still working that they can contain the remainder of the material in the tank car.
And Dr. Palmer, it looks like they might be having some success because the cloud is beginning to thin out. The chemical is now, you can barely see a trace of the cloud coming out from underneath the car, so it looks like they were able to locate or at least seal up that hose connection. That is good news.
Yes, they have methods, the hazmat workers have methods to either apply a patch or to, again, if they've managed to find a valve, to shut off the valve. And that would be the normal procedure.
Now still, though, you can see the chemical cloud. It appears to be laying low to the ground rather than dissipating up into the atmosphere. You can still see evidence of that cloud on the ground. For what distance is this cloud still dangerous?
Well, it can be for many hundreds of yards away, probably. Chlorine gas is about 2.5 times heavier than air, and so it will lay low to the ground. And so as the wind slowly picks it up and dilutes it, that cloud will dissipate, or that low-lying cloud will dissipate. Certainly chlorine in high concentration can even be deadly, obviously, but at lower concentrations, it's a problem down to about a part per million. So I'm sure they're out monitoring at distances away from this leak and making sure that it's safe for people to be in the areas that they're checking.
About 50 people had to be checked out in hospitals because they were having breathing problems. How close were they likely to the chlorine leak?
Well, if they were experiencing breathing problems, people that are very sensitive to materials in their lungs might have had that at fairly low concentrations. They probably were still, I'm guessing, several hundred yards away or even further away than that. And you have a little bit of an acid burn in your mouth and your throat when you breathe a gas like this. And so I'm guessing that's what they were experiencing, was that bite in their throat. And as long as they got away from it and started breathing clean air and getting a little oxygen, they're probably going to be okay, but I'm sure they're under medical surveillance. So.
Well, certainly since we took the picture, the live picture there, these hazmat workers made quick work of their duty up top of that car. They've now left the scene there, and it appears that the cloud is completely dissipated. Dr. John Palmer, American Chemical Society, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, our very own medical correspondent up in New York. Sanjay, we were just hearing that some 50 people are being treated for inhalation problems. Do you think these people are going to have any permanent damage? It appears that we don't.
Carol.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, I just wanted to find out, now that it appears that they've been able to seal the leak, fortunately, we're just getting a view of the nearby mobile home park there. I'm wondering, some 50 people had to be treated at the hospital for breathing problems. Do you think there's going to be any permanent damage?
It's really unlikely, Carol. Typically, the type of concentrations of chlorine, even though we saw that pretty scary looking cloud of gas, the type of concentration that you need are pretty high within the air. And the good thing is that as soon as that chlorine actually gets outside the leak site, it actually dissipates or sort of gets diluted pretty quickly. So besides some irritation to the eyes, the nose, the mouth, things like that, it's unlikely that they have any permanent effects. The permanent effects that we're concerned about, of course, would be more permanent effects to the lungs. Actually, that same gas, that burning, actually causing scarring of the lungs, which would cause more permanent damage down in the long run, but unlikely statistically that would happen.
Well, that's good news indeed. All right, well, you watched it live. Those hazmat workers were able to seal off that chemical leak. Chlorine is no longer flowing into that mobile home neighborhood adjacent to that chemical plant, and all looks well for now in Festus, Missouri. Breaking news there. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, for joining us from New York. Now, still ahead, flying for...
Accidents happen. Most of us can recognize the warning signs of imminent danger and try to prevent accidents from occurring. Sometimes these accidents may involve materials known as acutely hazardous materials, or AHMs. Chlorine, when stored at or above 1,500 pounds, is classified as one of the 136 acutely hazardous materials. Here at Metropolitan, we work near chlorine stored in amounts well above this threshold quantity and may also soon be using ozone, another acutely hazardous material. These AHMs are defined in Section 5189, Title 8 of the California Code of Regulations, published by Cal OSHA. This regulation is known as Process Safety Management of Acutely Hazardous Materials, or PSM for short. PSM is a new way of dealing with potential for catastrophic releases in the workplace. Other new regulations will deal with releases off-site apart from the risk management prevention plans you already know about. But this regulation, PSM, is designed to protect people in the workplace, where you are. This regulation contains 13 separate requirements that affect employees, contractors, and anyone else working on or near an acutely hazardous material. Those 13 elements are process safety information, from which is developed the keystone of this regulation. The process hazard analysis. Next comes training, contractor requirements, hot work permits, and pre-start safety reviews.
See that last one again?
There are also specific requirements for mechanical integrity and operating procedures, as well as management of change procedures and incident investigation procedures. Finally, there are requirements for emergency action plan, an illness and prevention plan, and last but by no means least, employee participation. Let's look at these elements in more detail. Employee participation is required to prevent employees working on or near a process involving an acutely hazardous material, or employees who may be affected by others working on or near that AHM, with consultation and information developed in response to this regulation. This video represents an overview of the process involving chlorine to familiarize you with that area of the regulation. Dry liquid chlorine is the most commonly used substance for disinfection at the Metropolitan Water District treatment facilities. Dry liquid chlorine is a compressed gas, amber in color, containing 99.5% pure chlorine. At room temperature, 1 cubic foot of liquid chlorine will expand to approximately 460 cubic feet of gas. Chlorine in a gaseous form is greenish-yellow in color and visible at high concentrations. Chlorine as a dry liquid or gas is neither explosive nor flammable, but will support combustion. If chlorine remains dry, it is non-corrosive. However, mixed with moisture, it is extremely corrosive. Chlorine liquid is approximately 1.5 times the weight of water, and in a gaseous form 2.5 times heavier than air. Of all the chemicals that Metropolitan uses for treatment, chlorine calls for the most caution. When exposed to chlorine gas, the eyes, nose, throat, and skin will develop a burning sensation. This burning sensation results from the acids formed when chlorine reacts with moisture. The chlorination application process is composed of chlorine storage facilities such as 1-ton containers, district-owned tanker trailers, railcar tankers, and storage tanks. Process equipment includes assorted valves, pipes, regulators, gauges, expansion vessels, evaporators, chlorinators, flow meters, diffusers, and leak detection sensors, monitoring systems, and alarms. Special safety equipment and protective clothing are available. Dry liquid chlorine is fed into the chlorine room through metal piping painted orange. Once inside the chlorine room, the evaporators heat the liquid chlorine to a gaseous form. The piping for the gaseous chlorine is painted yellow. The chlorine gas feed rate is then regulated by the chlorinator. From the chlorinator, the gaseous chlorine is fed into a complex chlorine solution feed system made of PVC piping marked with yellow stripes. Leak detection sensors, monitoring system, and alarms are strategically located throughout each plant facility. The alarms sound like this. If you hear this alarm, follow the instructions provided to you by the operations personnel or tour guide. Now that you've had an overview of this process, we know you'll be more aware of what is involved when you next hear about process safety. If you have any questions about process safety management, ask your supervisor or safety representative for more details. And when you visit a facility with acutely hazardous materials, you'll be able to do your part to ensure a safe working environment. Thank you for your cooperation and work safely.